This conference will now be recorded.
Okay.
Make sure your mics are in front of you.
Yeah, so who was missing? We got Randy.
Alan isn't here.
Huh?
Alan isn't here yet. Alan?
Randy.
Randy.
Randy's
I'm
on-
sorry,
Randy's online.
Oh, he is.
John Gregg.
Yeah, I can see him. His picture's on there.
Okay.
He's my seat buddy.
Oh,
Okay,
there's
and-
Doug.
And did John Gregg say he was not gonna make it? He did,
Yeah, he's away.
yeah, I think, I had the impression, yeah, okay.
Hey, Phil, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Doug.
Okay.
Talk
So
loud.
I'd like to call the May 5th Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee Budget Workshop to order. We have present in the room Carol Panko, I'm
Joe Schofield
just go, yeah, I'm just.
and Glenn Sikorsky.
Glenn Sikorsky, and on the phone, Doug Zanter and Randy Bottleson. If, I don't know that we're gonna actually have any votes per se, so I don't think there's any necessity to vote for Doug and Randy to have be able to vote. So I think we need to start out right at the beginning with the operating expenses. And Glenn has.
Well, good morning. What I've done, and I apologize to Doug and Randy because I didn't realize that they weren't going to be here. And thanks, Scott. How's the wife, by the way? Good. Thank you. Making progress.
Good. Good.
So this first handout is basically what Scott sent to me the other day, and it shows the CDD expenses and income of our 1.475 and all the CDD expenses that Castle puts together for us each month. So you can see on the far right corner that the yearly budget is 1.475932. And if all goes well, we have the same amount of expenses, and then therefore we break even. So you can see the allocation of the accounting based on the 706-501 codes. So I want you to understand that that is where those numbers are coming from. And this is the March statement that you have in front of you right now to the end of March, okay? Now, this is something that Scott gave me too, through the system, that shows the yearly budgets for past years for 2021 and 22, using that format that I just gave you for the end of March that I summarized for our committee each month. So again, this is just showing the yearly budget for 2022 and 1,459,000. So you can see we pull these numbers by the expenditures that we spend, and from that we also get from Inframark through Gateway the financial statements, the balance sheet, the profit and loss for what's called the 002 account, which is Pelican Preserve. Now, Inframark year end is what, Scott?
September 30th.
And ours is
September
30. So we're on the same page. So you can see this numbers here that I gave you. If you look at the first page, you can see Pelican Preserve on the second column. All right? That's the Pelican Preserve Fund. That's where our money is in the recent handout I just gave you, which totals 5.7 million. We have payables, etc., 694. If you flip the page to the next page, you have the balance sheet, the second column, Pelican Preserve Fund, of showing our reserves. So this is where I pull the numbers through getting the Infomark financial that I've set up with them to email me every month. Now, you can see there's a general fund, Pelican Preserve Fund, Stony Brook. All this is Gateway, right? So we're just concerned about the second column, which is us, 002, Pelican Preserve. Now, if you go to the third page of the handout, this ties into the template that we're going to be discussing today. Now, Infomark is maintaining these books and records. So you can see on the third page at the top is our revenue through tax collection, HOA, reserves, discount fees, investments, with year to date to the end of March, which is October, November, December, January, February, March. So this is 6 months already, halfway. And like Scott put out in his email, we have to project what we're going to spend for the upcoming fiscal year of September 23. Well, you take 6 months and you basically estimate another 6 months, and that's what you come up with the numbers. Now you can see there's a lot of accounts here. There's a lot of accounting being done, and they do a good job, as does Castle with our template numbers that I gave you initially. So I know I wasn't here at the last meeting. I apologize because of tax season, but we now are going to change some things, I understand, right?
I guess we are.
I guess we are. Now, that's another issue. But the point is, it's so important in any organization to have solid numbers on a timely basis, right? And right now, for instance, Scott will send me, or Chris Santos, a list of payables. I'll get the list from him or Chris, and I'll review it to see what's being paid. For instance, Ameriscape, there was a $9,388 invoice, which was to one of the landscaping charges for it to be turned over association. There was on here mainly Ameriscape and Weiner, our security. Those are our two biggest. And then you've got things like Comcast with the Guard Shack, their bills, FLP bills, etc. So the system's in place to have someone get the invoice, set up the payable, right? Send it to us. So us, on me being as treasurer, to work with Scott and Chris and make sure that that invoice is correct. So we approve it. Scott then moves the funds and they pay the bill. So it's not a complicated system other than it has to be done timely. And in turn, Infomark's got a very good accounting system because they do this for many organizations. And they're familiar with what we call nonprofits with reserves, etc. So they do a very good job of maintaining those numbers, as does Castle, so that we know that when we come and sit here every month, that we look at the numbers and say, have we exceeded those projections? Have we underspent those projections? Are we on track with our budget, etc.? And I think so far it's been pretty good. You know, things come up, you know, like I saw one bill where some idiot kids threw soap in the fountains by Winn-Dixie about a year or two ago, right, Scott? And so you get that extra bill that's not projected. You can't project that. But we can project landscaping. We can project certainly security. It's a fixed contract. And other than that, you know, the numbers should be consistent. All right?
Okay.
So today, Phil, I'll let you take over if there's any questions.
Well, I think there's probably lots of questions.
Okay, so
Hey, I was just going to bring a point up. The Ponds Group only uses Infomark in the CDD system. And we, all the things Glenn say, we have that same capability with that system. And we look at every line item. I think, Phil, you know that. But we have the same system with Infomark. we use Infomark and we use the software like you said, Glenn.
Well, yeah, if you look at page 4 of my last handout, thank you, Doug, the one with the Infomark numbers, the very last page.
Yeah.
You'll see waterway management services at the top, the very last page. And that's Doug's area of maintaining that budget. So we produced an $819,000 budget. And to date, the budget's been a $409,500. They've spent $386,485. So there is a variance, but as I always say in accounting, accruals are when the payables are set up, when they're paid, etc. So Doug, I read your email where you're projecting that this number isn't going to change, is it, for 23? The 800.
No, we'll be able to maintain without an increase. And I can go through how later, but that's correct.
So that aspect of the budget for us today is pretty well taken care of, right?
Right.
So Doug and the Ponds Group is taking care of that. Where I'm going to be interested to see now that Joe about the landscaping is, and what I've talked to Bob Gephardt about is, they want to pull some of this landscaping out to have a different look at how the system works.
And when we say pull landscaping out, we're saying pull it out of, well, I'm looking at this document that you gave us, which is the I guess it's entitled CDD Expenses.
Yes, that is the yearly budget that's.
And that includes, at this point, the landscaping information is in there, right?
Exactly.
Or the landscaping dollars are in there. So what I'm trying to get is, Glenn, if I look at the total CDD income number, the budget is $1,475,000.
Right.
Where does that show up in these Infomark statements?
Scott.
I don't,
Okay.
I don't know the back of the house accounting. Laura may be able to answer that better. As far as what I do is we produce the O&M agreement budget line items, but I'm not sure how that transfers over to the GSC.
I thought it's just through the replenishment retainer, right?
Well, except,
Well, those are the actuals.
Okay.
The budget, I'm not sure how they plug that.
yeah, in other words, where is, we've got documents here, we've got this thing from Infomark. I
Yeah.
guess. And then we've got this statement that Laura sent us that we're supposed to use in some way. And that statement just has the HOA agreement at the bottom. But that number is not the same as the $1,475,000.
Well, she gave us a 2-page operating budget.
Yeah.
Starting with operating expenses,
Right.
then there's landscaping, and then there's waterway.
Okay.
So if we look at landscaping expenses in the financials of Infomark, they have administrative, operating, and I don't see either the securities in there. Oh, down at the bottom, contractual landscaping maintenance. See, there's a $269,000 number there, which ties into the projection of on that template she gave us.
But where did that number come from? Where does the 269,642 come from?
Both from the contract with the Mariscape, right?
And that's part of it.
Yes.
There's a contract, I think, 238 or something.
Yeah, and then you got the other projections that may transpire on top of that, but that's where the biggest number comes. So it is in the Infomark statements, in that.
But that's only for, hey, Glenn, but isn't that only for that one contract that was just awarded? That's the only thing Infomark shows from that aspect, because that's the only thing they saw was that new contract that was negotiated by the team.
Yeah, for CDD. and
Right. That's the only thing CDD sees, because the other stuff is on the Castle side, all the other detail.
The contracts are 228,303. And we have a lot of other activities taking place outside of the contract that actually come up. The 269, reducing or taking that contract item out, the difference is not what the other expenditures are. We have greater expenditures than that. So I'm not sure where that 269, I don't know how that total came to be.
Well, you're looking at the current contract you just signed. What was the previous contract?
The previous contract was 238.
So there's about 38,000 there.
Yeah, and we
Other-
spend more than 38,000 on other things outside of that contract. So I'm not sure where that number came from.
Well, that's a,
I think we're gonna have to ask Laura.
yeah, I
because
agree.
We can't match up the Infomark statement because it's like, you know, the Ponds Group presents their budget and then their budget comes across to this statement of operations.
Yep.
Where does the O&M budget and expenses and revenues come into play on the statement? I don't believe they do.
Because we spent almost $684,000, or we have budgeted $684,000 for landscaping for this current fiscal year. So that 269, I don't know where that's come from.
But the 600, you say the current fiscal year, the year that we are
The
currently
current,
operating.
the year we're currently in is $684.301 per my calculation, which I think is pretty accurate. I won't say dead accurate, but that sounds about right.
Actually, what this statement of operations is only what runs through the 002 account.
That's right.
So
It
the
doesn't.
002 account, which includes all the administrative charges for that the CDD bills the 002 account and the Ponds Group, along with the security invoices, they will be on this statement. Everything that runs through the O&M, because it's paid by Castle, a
That's right.
third-party vendor, is not part of this
No,
at all.
That-
So
That,
you have to combine the two.
that's what shows in this O&M statement. Is that right?
Correct.
See, because in the past, that's the way it's always been done. We've had a situation where we've had what I have always referred to as kind of the overhead stuff, which is the administration, operational administrative services. I'm looking at, and those two things. And then we've had the ponds budget. Then we've had the O&M budget, which has usually been referred to and is on Laura's statement as the, let me see.
landscape service.
HOA agreement,
Oh,
HOA agreement.
yes.
The HOA agreement are those O&M numbers.
True.
So we've had, we've got these administrative, operational administrative, and operating expenses. My mind boggled about,
Well, if you look at her template she provided, expenditures, operating, landscape service, waterway, other fees and charges.
yeah,
So 4 categories, right?
yeah, right.
And excuse me, the operating is a percentage of what they've determined that Pelican Preserve should.
Mhm.
The landscaping is pretty well the contract plus anything that transpires within Pelican Preserve. And then waterway, we know that. And then lastly, the O&M agreement.
Mhm.
So you have 4 categories. And as a committee, we have to determine what we're going to spend in those 4 categories to be able to provide to Infomark so they can incorporate those numbers into their financials.
Mhm.
And so it breaks down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's where it goes, but the numbers we have that we've been given don't seem to
Right.
be similar, for example. And I think we ought to focus on the budget, on the 2023 budget,
Okay,
which is what we're trying to forecast.
which
right?
we've always done every year.
Yeah, right. So we should focus on the 2023 budget numbers.
Mhm.
And if I look at those numbers on there doesn't seem to be a coming together of the numbers that we have in the O&M statement with the numbers that are on this Infomark statement.
Well, that's a current number there that you're
Well,
looking.
I'm, yeah, okay, but let me look at the quote annual budget. Maybe that's the way we can.
Yeah, if you look at the annual budget to the end of March, there is the column there on the far third from right to left,
Yeah.
the third one over, there's where your year-to-date budget, I should say is a second column, excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay, year-to-date budget, for instance, they projected we would receive 2.762 million in income or funding, and we would spend 1.279 with a revenue over of 1.4 million. That's the second column for Pelican Reserve Fund.
Run that by me again.
We'll go to the third page,
Yeah.
starting.
Right.
Second column.
Yep.
Year-to-date budget,
I see.
annual budget.
Yes.
That's to the, for the year. So you can see the numbers for the budget are categorized by Infomark in that column.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the question wasn't the revenue.
No.
I believe the question
The
involves
expenditures.
other fees and charges. And correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, your question is, the annual budget is 747 on Infomark statement,
Right.
but
But it's
our O&M is 1.475.
0.475. Exactly. That's where
So that's the only, that's a question that we have to get answered.
yeah.
And the other thing there, that 1.475, I'm looking at that and saying mine is 891. You subtract that, that's less than what Joe said the landscaping total number was. So I don't understand how that, you know what I'm saying? If you take the 891 out of the 1.475, how does that there?
Your 819 is not in that 1475.
Okay.
It is a separate number.
Okay, I got you. And I'm sorry about transposing those numbers. It's early here.
The pond budget has always been separate. We've
Okay.
had kind of these overhead items from Infomark, the ponds budget, and then the O&M agreement and reserves. Those have been the 4 things that have made up our budget. And what I'm confused by is where those 4 things are. You know,
There doesn't seem to be an accurate summary page.
no.
And I think that's really it. You have the charges by the district, which is actually the 002 account.
Right.
You have lakes and ponds, which is also within the 002 account.
Yep.
And then you have the HOA agreement where the numbers don't match.
Right.
And I think we just need clarification from Infomart,
Yeah.
where they're, and actual numbers aren't really the key here, the budget numbers.
The budget numbers are the, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we've got to focus on. And this thing is further confused by the template that Laura gave us, and I don't know that Laura's here, but that template doesn't seem to match up with, if I look at any of those things, doesn't seem to match up with the Infomark statement. Let me try, for instance, actuals through March 2022.
Well, if you look at the FY '22 budget on her template,
Yes.
the 819 matches to the annual budget.
That's, the 819 is fine.
Yeah.
Ponds is not a problem. Ponds,
Okay,
we can
so
forget about.
that matches up.
Right.
The operating on the Infomark totals there's 3 categories in their financials: admin, operating admins,
Yeah.
operating expense.
It's just, right.
Yeah, so do those 3 equal the 680,
The 664.
1.128394 on the first page,
Okay.
okay?
Mhm.
So I could add those up, but I don't, they're gonna be close. You know, numbers, they're, not that they're saying they're wrong, but, and then last but not least, she's got the landscaping broke out, which I think she did that with the idea we're gonna do that landscaping, whereas in their financials, the landscaping is put under operating on their financials. So there's a mix there where she's only broke
No,
out.
I think that the landscaping, yeah,
See the 269, 642?
yeah.
She's got that number on her template. That's the only number that matches up,
That's right.
okay?
Oh, I think I know what that is. The annual budget is going to be understated because the first 6 months of the year, it was paid out of the O&M agreement. So what they're doing is taking the landscape expenses and the remaining, and there again, without doing the number crunching, I can't be sure.
Yeah,
But they may have just forecasted what that budget's gonna be for the remaining bills that they're gonna pay through Infomark and not through S. I don't know that to be true.
no, but you look at capital outlay Boardwalk, she's got that under operating expense, 517,250. So she has pulled these numbers from that Infomark financial.
But where, yeah, okay, but let's take any one of these. Let's take the fiscal year 2022 budget. And where do I, and for operating expenses, she comes up with 1,128,394.
Right,
Okay. Where does that show on this Infomark?
well, you gotta add up.
Okay. And does it add up?
Well, I'm gonna, for instance, look in that, her template. The 517,250 is under the first column of their financial capital outlay Boardwalk. So, okay, that matches.
That matches.
The landscaping, 269,642, she didn't put that in that column. There it is there, 269,642.
Right.
So we take those 2 out,
Okay.
and then she's allocated different expenditures, like, let's look at like engineering fees, for example. Where in Infomark's financials, there should be engineering fees. Yes, there it is there, 19,000. The first number there, FY '22 budget on her template equals the number in the Infomark statement I gave you. So she's incorporated these numbers, just that they're showing differently on her template than they are in the financial statements. But I'm comfortable, I'm confident that, I didn't crunch the numbers to add them up, but it looks like that's what, I'm assuming that's what she's done. Bless you.
Thank you.
I guess she's, okay.
Okay?
The 1,401,090, which shows on the Infomark statement, as operating expenses, annual budget. The 1,401,090
What page on?
on page 4, I guess.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, the last,
Operating expenses.
yeah,
I'm just trying to get someplace where these statements are the same. It comes up to 1,401,090
where are you getting that number?
at the bottom of operating expenses for the annual budget. No.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Well, that's up here in operating up here,
Yes, yes.
okay?
Let me explain where I'm trying to go. I just want to make sure that we're in the same place. That 1,401,090, do you see that? It's on page 3.
Yeah,
Okay, for operating expenses. That is the total of, on Laura's template, of the 1,128,394 and the 269,642,
yeah.
I assume.
1,128,394 plus 269,
642.
642 equals 1,398,036.
Okay,
And
so there's some other things that aren't in there. What's the difference?
well, I don't. Let's look at her total overall. 1,128 and 269 is 1,398. 1,398,036. And if I take their financial and I take the first administrative expenses is 31,743 plus operating admin is 124,621 plus, then I've got operating 1,401,090 plus, and don't forget about waterway. So we're at 1,557,454. And subtract the difference of 139,8036 equals $159,418.
Where are you taking us?
Huh?
Where are you taking us?
Well, go back here.
Yeah, no, okay, all right. Okay.
I added up the categories.
Yes, okay.
Because she's
yes.
consolidated expenditures into one grouping on her template, but on their financials, there's admin, op admin, operating, 3 different categories.
Mhm.
And I just took the 1,128,394 plus the 269. Now, we're spinning our wheels here. We should ask Laura, but it's within 150 some thousand. I'm sure if we look a little closer, we would find it. So I don't think, but what we're trying to determine is here from this template, now we have to determine what we're going to think we're going to spend.
Right.
Okay? So I think we can use these numbers on her template for this purpose today without really worrying about that 150,000 difference.
What template are you referring to that you got from Laura?
This one.
Oh, okay,
Did you get it? It was here when we came in.
okay.
Okay, so are you guys saying that basically what you passed out to us is the same as
Yes,
these numbers that Laura gave us, except it's in a different form here
yes,
than it is over here.
yes.
But basically, the numbers are the same.
Yes, for these purposes today.
So
And I would
would
ask-
it be possible that we could put these other papers aside then and just use these
That's what I'm getting to. We should
and
boil
go
it down
through the
to-
line items?
Yes, that would be our purpose today.
Okay,
Yes.
So these 4 pages we should
this I can understand.
put up here and
Yeah, but you gotta understand, I gave them to you so you can see how the accounting works and where the numbers come from.
Right.
And who's providing them.
But there are two categories, and I don't know where, I guess Laura has them in operating expenses,
She's consolidated.
administrative, and
Yeah,
operating administrative, as well as operating expenses. Okay, those are all on her, those are all included on her template?
yeah, and the big one, like, for instance, contract security services.
Yeah.
She's got that under operating expense, 397, 820.
Yep.
That's there. That's the big one,
Mm-hmm.
as is the outlay for the boardwalk, et cetera. And the contract 269, landscaping maintenance. So our major expenditures are there on the first page of the template she gave us. You comfortable with that, Phil, or not?
I'm not entirely comfortable. Well, there's aspects, I guess. Yeah, I mean,
Well, you know what they say, numbers don't lie and liars don't do numbers, so.
I think where the confusion lies is we're looking at two different types of budgeting and financial reporting.
Yeah,
You have the district, which is what Laura provided us.
Yep.
And this is what is going to come out of the 002 account.
exactly.
Then we have the O&M agreement, which is a separate spreadsheet and is not incorporated into the district's budget
Agreed.
or financial reporting.
Agreed.
So we need to keep that in mind. So if we go back to what Glenn passed out in the beginning, those two spreadsheets that are strictly with the O&M, that's the one that we're going to work on and present to the district.
Yep.
That's the one that's in question, and what is still going to be paid through the O&M and what's not. Like in this year's budget, we had the man access control contract within the O&M
We did.
in the budget. But mid-year, they changed that.
Yep.
So you don't see the expenses occurring on our monthly operating statement because it's being paid through the 002 account.
Exactly, because we made that contract with CDD and Weiner for mainly for the sales tax purposes. Yeah,
Correct. So then, if we're now talking about removing landscape out of the O&M, we're moving that piece out. We just have to reduce the size and the scope of the O&M budget and financial reporting. So what you're going to be removing is, let's see,
well, you're not going to remove the contract, the Meriscape contract.
See, what I'd like to do is right now on Laura's, if we're working on Laura's thing that she gave us, she's got the HOA agreement at 747,620 for this year's budget. If you look at her template, you go down to the bottom, the HOA agreement.
Yep.
Okay,
I see it.
647, 620.
Yep.
You see that?
Yep.
How do we get from the 647 or 747, 620 to the 1,475,000. Well, I guess it isn't 1 million. Somehow, on one thing you gave us, Glenn, it's 1,459,000.
Well, the one I gave you to the end of March, look at the far right column.
Yeah.
1.475.
Yeah, how is that different from,
Well, one, she doesn't have,
okay, well, but what I'd like to be able to do is to get from the 747,620 to the 1,475,000.
well, one item is the security contract.
Okay,
Right.
that's fine, yeah. Is it the entire, okay, so let's,
We just don't know what Laura did when developing
is,
the,
747, 620 number. Yeah. But I gotta assume she's not.
she's not here today, is she?
I believe she's here.
Is she?
Want me to go get her?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it'll clear up the numbers.
well, it should,
So I think what we should probably be focusing on is the fiscal year 2022 budget and the fiscal 2023 budget. Comparison of
well,
those two numbers.
I agree with you, Carol. What I wanted to do was reconcile the numbers from the fiscal 2022 budget so that we can then move on to the 2023 budget.
Oh, got it, okay.
Which are the numbers we have to put out. But Laura, I guess the question of you is, in putting together the operating expenses, the budget, the fiscal year 2022 operating expense budget on your template.
It's not mine, it's Infomark's, but yes,
Oh, Infomark.
yes. I can probably answer your questions though.
Um,
All the templates come from Infomark.
We're trying to figure out what's in that number versus what's in our, we have at the very bottom, there are two figures that at the very, there's that 1,128,394, which is, I'm looking at the fiscal year 2022 budget.
I'm looking at the screen, so I don't know what you're looking at.
Operating expenses,
Page 2,
operating expenses on your template.
page 1.
Yeah.
There you go.
See the 1,128,394,
Yep.
the second column?
Yep.
Okay. There's that number. Then there's the 747,620,
I don't see a
which is at the
747,
very bottom. You
620.
gotta go down to the bottom.
It's the HOA
agreement. For the HOA agreement.
Second column, 747, 620, HOA agreement, right there.
Right there.
Okay,
Okay.
I think the question is what does that number represent?
Yeah.
which number?
The 747,620.
This is what comes, the reimbursements that are submitted, that we reimburse for the expenses. That's what that is.
Okay.
That's the budget for that. What you guys call the O&M, HOA, it's the same thing. It's the reimbursement account. That's
Okay,
the
so
amount that
that's-
was funded for the reimbursement account.
So that's the stuff that's paid through
Castle,
Castle
and
as
then-
opposed to being paid through.
correct.
You know,
And you can see we made a pretty big adjustment to it because there was a few, like the security contract was moved over and we pay that directly now instead of going through Castle. And there was some of the ponds expenses that are shifted over to us now as well. So that's why that number for fiscal 22 is so much less than fiscal 21.
Mhm.
So we're not going to be able to compare apples to apples with what's going on currently because we made changes mid-year,
That's right.
Mhm.
or really after, mid-year almost, a little less than mid-year.
Well, you can see, I mean, if things keep going the way they are, you're not going to have enough money in there because for the first 6 months of the year, you already have $477,000. And assuming all things remaining equal, and if that's the same expenses for the second half of the year, there's not going to be enough money in that budget fund. So We'll obviously have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, if you look here, this number, this 747,620, so that's what was budgeted for that line. This is what's been actually spent for the first 6 months. So if the next 6 months are the same as the first 6 months, there will not be enough money in that account.
Yeah, right. There's only 270,000 left.
I think another question was, that's off, because our budget, the O&M budget for 2022 was actually 1,470,000.
And we moved the security out of there, which was, that was over $500,000, I know. So that's why that's less.
Okay.
So that would be,
400,000. 397, 400.
Yeah, it's 413.
right here, 397,820 is what we moved
Right.
over.
Okay.
So 400,000 of that, it was pulled out and moved up to that line item. And I don't remember if we did that effective right away in October or if that was later into the fiscal year, because if that was later into the fiscal year, then some of the expenses for the security up to the point before we separated it would be included in what you've spent so far in the HOA agreement. So it may not mean that because we spent $477,000 so far this year, that that's going to be the trend. I always just assume all things remaining equal.
It's not going to, I agree.
Yeah, so if we didn't move this until November, December, and you had a couple of months in there that were paid through the HOA agreement, then there would have been more spent in the first 6 months than there will be in the remaining 6 months. So.
I don't think we're.
Hey, Lord, this is Doug. A question there. You mentioned that we don't have enough money for the rest of the year to pay if it's
No, I
on.
don't know that, Doug. I don't know that,
No,
Doug.
I don't agree with that.
So it just depends. I don't remember when we started making moves out of the HOA account and moved them onto other line items. If we reallocated the remaining funds to other line items, we'll be fine. I just, off the top of my head, I don't remember when all that stuff happened.
I believe
So,
you did, and I'm thinking, here we are in,
I think it happened in February.
yes, because there was still things coming across from the old security company.
okay.
Can
I
we-
couldn't remember when your contract went into place, so.
I think it was April.
No, it wasn't April. It was,
March?
it was before April. It was like probably January or February, I
Yeah,
want to
okay,
say.
so that makes.
So I mean, there
sense.
was a few months that were paid through so it would be, the number for the remaining 6 months is going to be less because we
Agreed.
took that and moved it over into this.
But if you looked at the two together, the things you moved and the things that stayed in their own agreement, if you add them together, we probably are okay. Maybe we move the security and that contract, and what went with that was more than what was going to be spent. You know what I'm saying? Which meant that left less money in the other side.
Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on it. Don't worry. At this point, I'm not worried about it.
Neither am I.
So
I think we should.
But in terms of getting to the fiscal 2023 budget.
Yep.
It seems to me that maybe what we need to do to wipe away some of the confusion is to look at total expenditures, everything. Because that's what we're gonna spend. And those total expenditures are 3,329,656 in the fiscal year 2022 budget.
That's what was budgeted. That's not what was
That was-
actually spent.
Right, that was what was
Yes.
actually, what was budgeted. But
Correct.
that's what we've got to compare to, because that's, the variance is.
Well, you have to look at more than just that. So that was the amount that you thought you were going to spend this year. And there are some accounts that have spent considerably more than what you budgeted for this year. Like I know your engineering, because of the stuff going on with the Boardwalk, there was a lot of
Yes.
extra expenses there. And we moved some things over to the Boardwalk account, and hopefully that's straightened out by now. So the reason that this column is on here is to show you what you've spent so far the first 6 months into your budget. So it gives you, this is half of your year is done, and this is what you've spent so far in the first half.
The million, if I look
The
at the
million
grand
five.
total, the 1,546,886,
Yes,
that's how much we've spent so
that's
far.
how much you've actually spent so far.
Mhm.
Those are bills that have been paid by Infomark. So, and then the column next to it is what they're projecting that you're going to spend for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
And then this column H here is where they think you're going to end up at the end of the year, based on what you've spent so far.
And our projected revenue was 2.89 million.
I
So
don't
we're
think that's
about
on here.
100,000.
What might be helpful here for this exercise is if I go back and compare what is going to be removed from the O&M contract for 2023. I think that's the key here.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
what Glenn and I need direction on is what is being moved out of O&M. I already know the band access control is going to be moved out. But what are the other expenses that are going to be moved out of the O&M to the 002 account? Because that will appear in 2023 on the district's budget, and it will no longer appear on the O&M budget.
Agreed.
So I can modify the spreadsheet that
The one you gave us.
Glenn provided
Mm-hmm.
with the detailed information on what these areas cover. And I'll just eliminate what the district is going to be accepting invoices for.
Sure.
I just need to know what those GLs that I'm going to eliminate.
Yeah, I would say here, this is the contractual landscape maintenance. So that's the Ameriscape. We picked that up while you're still paying for it. It's just through a different way. We picked that up for the second half of the year. So I would say this is going to be doubled for next year. So 540,000 will come out for the landscaping because those bills are being paid here. And then you also have the security, which we're paying.
Are you now looking at your template
I'm looking at what's on the screen.
on the, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
the temp.
okay, your template, yep, got it. So I'm sorry, Laura, go back over that.
So this here,
Yeah.
this is the Ameriscape contract. Because it started April 1st, and
Right.
that's when the CDD started paying for it on your behalf through the 002 fund.
Mhm.
We moved money from the O&M line up to here. So this is the first half of the year. My advice would be to look at the contract costs because it's going to change mid fiscal year. So you'll have to take 6 months at the year one rate. And I think they kept it the same all three though, didn't they?
They did.
They did. So that'll make it easy. So you're looking at $540,000 just for landscaping.
And you moved those amounts from where?
O&M down here.
From the
This.
the HOA agreement?
Yes.
Mhm.
So it's still all coming out of the bottom line, it doesn't change. It's just which line and how it gets paid. So instead of
Yeah,
it being paid back to Castle through this line here, the O&M line, the bills are coming to us and we're paying it directly up here. But
Mhm.
bottom line, it doesn't change
See, we budgeted 1.475 for fiscal year 22
for the
on
O&M,
them. Now,
Yeah.
that's gonna drop 540,000 right off.
just
the
right
top.
there. And then we also
540
have the
being-
security
being the what?
contract.
Landscaping
Yep.
contract with the Mariscape.
Yep.
So
Okay,
now
you're talking about moving all the landscaping expenses, anything that Ameriscape bills is going to go.
No,
just the
No.
contract.
Just the contract?
just the contract. This is contractual landscape maintenance.
Okay,
Yeah.
And
it's
so that's the
nothing
390
above and
that's-
above.
that's the 397,820, is that right?
Right.
Well,
That's,
actually, the total landscaping, because we have to have the shared and the CDD
Right.
areas, is 539,280.
So that's why I have
Oh.
540,000. So I would put 540 in there for next year.
That's a good round.
Yeah,
That's-
I mean, I don't like all these odd, weird little
okay,
numbers.
that'll be paid out of,
002.
Same as now, it's just a different line.
Yeah.
And then we will get the bills here at the district instead of the bills going to Castle. So instead of being reimbursed through the 002 fund, we'll pay it directly through the 002 fund. It all comes out of the same place.
I think one thing we need to do is, you may be getting invoices for work being done outside the contract.
And those won't be paid without approval. Because the only thing that I've seen so far is stuff that was just the normal monthly stuff in the contract. That's all we've seen so far. If we get anything other than that, those will not be paid without approval.
okay.
Everything
Because that's
else-
outside the scope of what we're supposed to be covering.
Everything outside the contract has to be approved by PPAC.
And then those expenses, you could, if you wanted to set up a separate, if you're thinking about how much it's gonna be, if they would fall under one of these line items here, if it's like tree trimming or tree replacement or plant replacement, those kind of things, you can either do that or it's up to you how you want to handle it. I
So
mean,
those items are gonna be pulled out of the O and M, is what I'm
not
saying.
necessarily.
So that's what we have to decide.
And that's what you guys need to decide. So
Yeah.
that, I have no
I-
preference.
I would suggest that we want to see what occurs at this afternoon's meeting.
Well, I guess I don't
The
have a
gateway
preference, but I
meeting?
think from the
Hmm?
The
cleanest,
gateway meeting you're talking about?
I'm talking about the
Yep.
gateway meeting, because what's being debated at the gateway meeting, to a certain degree, is the proposal that the PPAC has made, that the board approve the movement of much of the landscaping work from out of the O&M agreement and directly to PPAC.
difference though,
Overseen.
from what you're saying, the landscaping work itself is not being moved out of the O and M fund. The landscaping work has already been moved out of the O and M fund. You're talking about the oversight of the work that the contractor is doing. Two different things. This $269,000 right here, we already pulled the landscaping work out of the O and M fund and are paying that through the district. So that's already been removed,
When was that done?
April 1st. You guys voted on it, PPAC okayed it,
That's
so
the contract.
this is the contract.
that's just
So
the
that's already
contract.
been pulled
Yeah,
out, so,
that's nothing else but just contract.
so the normal,
What is just the contract?
this 269,000,
69.
540.
it's 540 total, but yes.
The Mayor'scape contract we just approved.
The amount that was removed from the O and M fund is the amount of the contracts, the annual contracts for the CDD and shared areas. So those bills are now being paid by the district and not through the O and M fund. You guys approved that already.
All of the items outside the contract.
You guys
are
need to
the
decide what
ones
you're gonna
that
do.
are In discussion here.
Correct.
Is
Right.
what's gonna go through the 002 account and be removed from the O and M? Or are they gonna continue to bill Castle for all of those incidental costs outside the contract? That's what we have to determine.
Correct.
Because
Can you give me an example of that, Scott?
irrigation repairs, landscaping replacement.
See, you have line items on here for that already.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be, since we've already separated the landscape contract for the CDD and the shared areas, that we do the same with the rest of the repairs. So you keep all of your expenses separate. That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
You already have the line items there for it. You would just have to figure out how much you think it's gonna be and then fund those line items. So it's not like we're not reinventing the wheel. And then that amount would have to
I
be
think-
subtracted from the
I
O
think
and M.
Basically, it's what we've been doing, and we have line items.
Well, they're already on there. There's tree trimming,
Yeah,
irrigation
right.
repairs, plant replacement, tree
These
replacement,
pretty much
tree limb
match exactly
removal.
what we've been doing and the reports that we've been getting. I just highlighted the landscaping issues, but this is the same report that we've always got.
Yeah, we created this whole category specifically for
Yeah.
that purpose.
So let me clarify, the meeting this afternoon. CDD is gonna approve the pulling out of those other expenses, correct?
My understanding of the meeting this afternoon is the proposal is for the oversight of the landscaping contract to be moved from Castle to the landscape work. It has
Okay.
nothing to do with the money. That's my understanding of the motion in front of the
Okay.
board.
We still have to work out the details
So,
on how it's gonna be.
how it's
How it'll be
gonna
paid.
How the
Yeah.
accounting is gonna be
That's
done.
totally separate. There's the accounting and then there's the oversight. My understanding of the motion that's gonna be presented to the board is that it's the oversight of the contract,
Understood.
not the payment of the contract.
So if I would just pull out all the landscaping and the man access control out of the O and M,
Yep.
and that means,
Number of accounts. There are a lot of accounts.
there's a lot of accounts associated with it. Here.
We're knocking that O and M down significantly.
Well, it's just how it's gonna be funded.
Yeah.
So you're gonna remove tree and sod replacement, plant replacement, irrigation repairs, tree trimming, all of these items that are separated into their own GL lines are gonna be moved out.
They'll be moved on to this.
And
here.
what will happen is that will take, if we just compare it to this year's budget, that would take the O and M budget from 1,475,000 to 366,000.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But then the remaining 1.4 is gonna be pulled over and dropped into the 002 account.
I agree. It's not gonna change our overall
No.
budget,
No,
but
this number down here will stay the same.
yes,
It's just being allocated differently.
I agree.
Yeah, but we've got to be able to compare that, that month number that you just circled
Yeah.
with this year's budget.
I think.
Because, or at least this year's forecast, but usually we look at budget versus budget. We have to see, are we budgeting more
Well-
money next year than we are
You,
this year?
because of the way you guys are restructuring your finances on here, you are not gonna be able to look at it on a line by line basis.
I
You're gonna,
understand that.
you're gonna have to look at it as a
No,
total.
I understand that. And what
Yep.
I'm saying is we've got to look at, we've got to be able to look at the total.
Yep, and you
to see
can, it's
where-
here.
to see where we come out.
And as you plug in things here and remove things from the other one, this will
Yeah, but-
automatically
but-
update.
But so at this point, it would appear that we are spending, that we are budgeting $29,000 more for 23 than we budgeted for 22. Am I correct with that?
For the landscaping?
No, for everything.
No.
All right, now it's
I'm
actually about
looking- I'm looking
$30,000.
globally, because
Well, yeah.
that's where we've got to come up with a global budget so that we know, are we spending more money than we spent? Are we budgeting to spend more money in 2023 or compared to what we budgeted for 2022? That's what we usually look at as kind of our guideline. In other
Right.
words, we've
Yeah.
got to be able to go back and say, this is how much we increased expenditures or decreased expenditures versus the prior year.
Phil, when you look at that, will we have to pull out the boardwalk, which was a major expenditure?
That was a specific question I had when we get down to that, and that
Okay.
is, but let's talk about where we have to get, and where we have to get is we have to get the total numbers for the 2 years so that we can compare how much we're budgeting for, how much we budgeted in 2022 and how much we're going to budget in 2023 in total.
The changes in landscaping, the number that Laura has put here.
Yeah.
Is bigger than what we have had previously budgeted, but it has added items to it now.
Right.
And there were items that'll be removed from the
From
O&M.
the
but
O&M,
They're now
right.
included here.
And that's the reason I think we have to look at the total.
Yeah, and I think
we
Scott and I
gotta look
can identify those items, so when we go through line item by line item.
Yeah.
We put 0 in some places,
Mm.
and that's just someplace else.
Yes, okay.
So that should kind of balance out.
Sure, so basically what you need to do is take this line right here, this HOA agreement line that we had for last year.
Right.
And work with Scott to see which of those things are now gonna be
Right.
being paid by the CDD directly.
Yeah.
And then
And
reallocate
move-
those
move
funds
them
up
to
the appropriate line item.
The appropriate
Yep.
line.
Yep.
Okay, I understand that.
I didn't make
But-
a
And
copy
that
of this,
appropriate
but-
line item would be under landscape
It
services?
depends on what it is.
So you would just fill it in there?
It depends on what it is. It could be landscaping, it could be electricity, it could be the guardhouse, it could be anything. So depending on whatever expense you're removing from the HOAs, with O&M agreement, would be reallocated appropriately to whatever line above. And if there isn't an appropriate line above, we can make a new GL. It's not a problem.
What I did, just playing around, and this was totally unofficial, was I took all the items that were related to landscaping, and I made a spreadsheet just for those. And I took out the items that are now included in the new contract, so that the budget total I came to was the same, but the allocation of some of those was different. So in essence, I took out pine straw mulching, because that's now in the contract. That's a $58,000 bill.
Mhm.
That's now just in a different location.
Right.
Same happened with some of the irrigation repairs and maintenance. That is, a portion of that has moved into the new contract. So we're not comparing apples with apples. We have to kind of put a pear in the middle there sometimes.
See, but again, I come back to what we've got to do is we got to get to the total expenditures, everything. Ponds, the overhead items from the CDD, which is the, operational administrative costs and all of those stuff that get loaded on us by the CDD. What will be in the new landscaping account and what will be in the, remain in the HOA agreement account. We got to add all those things up and see how they compare 1 year to the next, budget to budget.
I think if we take the landscaping budget the way it is right now, that's how we should look at our budget today.
Yeah.
If there is a change made, then we can have to go revisit it. But I think for what we want to do, we should just follow the same line items because there has not been an official change yet.
No, exactly.
So until that, and if that happens, we really need to work to get our numbers together here as we're currently operating.
And I think with the way that Scott's been tracking those for you guys in the O&M fund, as far as like the irrigation repairs and the planting trees and all those expenses, it should be really easy to pull that stuff out.
It is. I've already done it.
Yeah, because I know that you,
Again, we can use the budget template to compare our expenses before they're moved to the 002 account.
Yeah, okay.
Everything that has been moved, meaning the contractual agreements with land access control and the landscaping, those will be pulled out of the budget because they've already been moved.
so I just want to clarify,
Okay,
you're not
Laura?
moving them into the 002 account. All of this money already is in the 002 account. You're just reallocating which line it's on. So,
Okay, so Laura, going to your template at the very bottom where it says total expenditures
mhm.
and comparing the second column, the fiscal year 2022, the 3,329,656 with the second column from the left, which is the fiscal year from the right, which is fiscal year 2023 budget.
Mm-hmm.
That 2,692,556.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that after everything is moved into new line items and whatever, those two numbers are going to remain the same?
Nope.
No.
The only one that will remain constant is the fiscal 22 budget because that's already set. What you guys are working on now is that second column from the right. That number can change. It depends on what numbers you plug in.
So.
That's
not
just where
all
it sits
those
right
are
now
in
as
the
of
HOA agreement.
The only one that is, there's a specific line that says HOA agreement.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only one that's the reimbursement account. So the fiscal 23 budget is totally flexible right now. That's what you guys are here to discuss.
Okay, so I thought you were saying that the line items you were going to pull out were in the HOA agreement line item right now, and they would just move into other places.
Correct.
So that the totals would
Yeah.
stay the same.
Right, but what I'm saying is that by the time you guys are done with your budget process, that 2,692,556, that number could change. You're just reallocating what's on the HOA agreement line.
Okay,
So if you don't make any changes to any of the numbers that are in there right now, besides just moving them around plus minus, if everything cancels out, then their total expenditures won't change. If you decide to change some of the numbers, if you think you're gonna need a little more or a little less, that's gonna change. So that's not set. It's not saying you only have $2,692,556. That's all you can spend, figure out where it goes. That's not what this is. That's just saying with the numbers that Infomark plugged in there for you, that happens to be the total. It's up to you to decide, do these numbers look realistic? Do we think that this is what we're going to need to spend? Are we going to spend a little more? Are we going to spend a little less? That's completely up to you. You're not locked into that as a total.
I have
so
one question.
even making these moves, even moving things around, isn't going to affect what we're going to be asking the people in Pelican Preserve to pay, because they're going to be paying less.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no.
Well, depending on if we decide to add more on.
Right.
But
If you
keep
take everything
if you
exactly
keep
the way it is
everything
right
the
now,
same And
yes.
just move it around to where it should be.
Like if you take another 300,000 out of the HOA agreement and reallocate that across the landscape agreement, it's not going to change. If you decide that's not enough and you want to do more with your trees or your plants, that
Okay.
number is going to go up.
Yeah, I have one question, because I'm missing one thing here. Well, maybe more than one thing. But there's no dollar amounts to any of these landscape services other than the contract.
That's because these are new. We just set these GLs up when we
Okay.
moved this stuff over and no budget numbers were given to us for that. So that's up.
not included in your 269 number then, there's no.
Correct.
Okay,
The amount,
okay.
the only thing that's included in the 269 is just the contract.
Okay.
Anything else you guys want to do
Okay.
above that to fill in the rest of these lines, you need to I'm assuming that's going to be reallocated from the HOA line.
These are the same as what's in our current budget that we get every month. these
Right.
Reports, so.
So I'm
we
assuming that
have-
you're
we
going
have
to just
numbers for
reallocate
but You
those.
left all those blank for the time being.
I have no idea what they're going to be.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and then that's why I don't decide that.
Okay.
That this is your budget.
Okay.
So
Go ahead, Carol. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I would like to suggest that the reason for doing this and bringing it under the control of PPAC, in my understanding, was that we would make landscape improvements in our community. And so I would like to suggest that in addition to moving things around with the existing numbers, that we add 100,000 onto that for what I would just call projects that the landscape committee will recommend to us.
Yeah.
And I would hope that maybe Laura or Scott, you could then add into that whatever would be needed for, I don't know, engineering, for design, for whatever. But I see an opportunity here because of the money that we're not spending on the boardwalk this year that was allocated previously, to put money into landscaping projects. And there will be other costs associated with it. It's never just the plants. You got to put, somebody's got to put them in the ground. Somebody's got to figure out which plants they are, all that sort of stuff.
I agree with you. I would say regardless of what happens this afternoon, we really have some dire needs in the community, and we don't have it in our normal funding for landscaping. And we can discuss that, or we can wait till we see what the supervisors do this afternoon and look at it.
Joe?
Yes.
But if you go back to what Laura said, I think that's an important thing. The budgeting, where it's paid for and stuff like that, is already been decided really with this landscaping thing. And all we're really doing this afternoon is who manages that stuff, which has nothing to do with the budget, really.
Right.
And let's separate them. And what happens this afternoon, I think is not material to what we're talking about from a budget standpoint. It's just, once we have the budget, who's going to manage those contracts, which is a total separate thing that's going to be debated this afternoon. But the budget is going to be the same regardless of what was done in that meeting.
I agree with you, Doug.
I'm on board with that.
I think we have to
And
look,
just because
we have to look at the total numbers
Right.
before, and Carol, I would suggest before we make a recommendation that we put in 100,000, let's see how the numbers come out and how
Okay.
much room we have. Because our general guideline has been, we don't want to spend, we want to spend as little more in next year than we spent this year. And that means grand total.
Yeah.
So we need to get some of these other numbers.
So what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And just so Glenn and I have our mark sheet orders, what we're going to do is modify our spreadsheet and leave out the contractual agreements at this time. Everything else will be put in the O&M budget and then decided later how it's going to be. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get.
yeah, you're just going to reallocate. It's
Yeah.
not, I mean, that's
Yeah.
easy.
Reallocate it.
And we can
It'll
reallocate.
just be a worksheet.
Okay,
Right.
we can reallocate.
That's very
We
simple.
can reallocate it later.
Oh, yeah, then it would come out of our financials when the budget is finalized and go over into the District 002. I mean,
That's the
that
way.
way we're comparing apples to apples as we go into next year.
Right.
So
Scott,
some of the items, as Joe mentioned, like pine straw and mulch, that number is gonna be 0 going into next year because it's in the contract.
It's actually a line item will remove.
Now,
Okay, so would it take you more than a week to do that?
no, we should be,
In other words, when we have our meeting next week? then-
Actually, I did most of it while I sat here.
yeah,
Oh.
no, we should be ready.
Okay.
We should be ready to look at these numbers at our regular meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask, Georgia to add that in as an agenda item.
What I'm
And
gonna
I'll,
do is I'm going to do the spreadsheet, send it over to Glenn for review, and then Glenn will get it out.
Yeah.
After review.
and I
Hey,
should have some
hey.
better numbers for the top half of this operating expenses. I'm almost done with the pieces that automatically flow through, like some of the,
Yeah,
I don't,
okay.
like
so
the lecture, some of the things up here that you don't really have control over. It's things that are
that I
automatically
refer to as-
allocated to you.
I refer to as our overhead.
Yeah, some of those
Right.
things,
Right.
you don't have control over, and
Right.
I'll make sure that I have those numbers updated in
Okay.
here.
Now, I have one question, and I'm not quite sure how we're handling this. Capital outlay dash boardwalk.
Yep.
It seems to me expenditures for the boardwalk came out of our reserves.
They did.
So why are they showing in our expenses?
We moved the money from the reserves to that line item. You cannot pay out of the reserves.
Okay, so
You reduce the reserve.
And
you show
increase the budget, yep.
expenditure.
Yep. You cannot pay things out of the reserve. So you take the money from the reserves and move it to the line item where
Okay,
where it's
but-
gonna be paid.
but in terms of collecting in terms of our revenues, we don't have to collect that money.
That is up to you. That we don't control that. I mean, if you want to replenish your reserve fund and bump up the number that's down here, the reserve capital, if you want to increase it, that is completely up to you. I said, this is your budget.
Okay.
There are
Hey.
very few things on here that only the district has control over.
At the current time, we have 5 million in reserves. So we'll have to look at that if we want to replenish that reserve for future use or
Well, I think
incorporate that into the budget.
one of the things that's going to come out of our discussions, it'll start this afternoon, is that we need to start spending money on, we have not reserved anything for landscape.
Yeah.
Landscaping reserves in terms of upgrading and replacing our landscaping. We just kind of been keeping things as they are, but we have to do some work. We have to have reserves as we do for roads and sidewalks. and
That's
things
the
like
other
that.
issue is roads too.
Yeah, I saw that up here. You do not have enough money in your budget. You're gonna need to look at this line right here. I mean, you're gonna spend about $90,000 on your roads this year, and you had a budget of, well, you had a bigger budget, but I'm guessing you're gonna be doing some more things. So there are items up in here that you need to look at.
Yeah.
Basically, the engineering, I would like some input from you on that. The only thing that I really know for that line is we have like recurring monthly charges from the engineer, which are minimal. The attorney's fees, I will get that from Tony. If you guys are anticipating anything further, I will need to know that, but the rest of this is all you.
Hey, Phil, but back to the point you were just on though. I view this boardwalk as a once in a lifetime opportunity to fund some strategic projects without looking like we're significantly increasing any of the fees. Or am I wrong at that?
No, I think you're right about that. I don't know that it's a once in
And
a
if
lifetime.
we don't do it this year, pardon the French, we'll be screwed because then it won't be in the budget and the following year it'll look like we did a big increase.
I would differ with you on that. I mean, I think it is an opportunity, but But if you go to the balance sheet, you will find that one of the things we have is we have almost $1.5 million in unassigned reserves.
Yes.
And that you're free to do with as you please.
And we can,
Ah,
I'm looking at that, Doug,
it's the same thing. I got you.
I'm looking at that as our opportunity that we ought to be using those unassigned reserves to do some of this upgrading and the work that we need to do on our landscaping and on our monuments. The front gate and the various monuments, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Scott has already made, we've looked at preliminarily some of this stuff. That's where those funds should be used.
Yeah. We got the front
Yeah,
gate all the way
I
down.
agree.
We got
Yeah.
Those dead palms that we took out.
Yeah.
We got some, and even the center island going down Pelican Preserve Boulevard is just
Right.
disastrous.
Exactly. I mean, we've got a lot of work we need to do to refurbish.
We just need proposals of how much money that will take, and we can work it into the budget.
We need to refurbish, need to refurbish a lot of stuff.
Did you need me for anything else? Or was that?
No, I
Okay,
think that's fine.
thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Laura.
Thank
You
you.
might want to look,
Okay.
looks like there was a typo on the sheet. When I was going through here on the electricity streetlights, they only had 7,800. I think she missed a zero. Should be 78,000. So make sure you update that in your template when you're working through it. I bumped it up on the screen here, but when I'm like, why is it saying you're gonna have almost $80,000, but they only had 7,800? It looks like they missed a zero.
Yeah.
I did not proof these. I just sent them out as I got them. So
Thanks, Laura.
Thank
just
you.
calling that to your attention. 'Cause
Well,
that's a,
before I ask, though, you need though,
Okay, so,
no, you can-
where are we with you at the moment?
this budget needs to be to me by next week because the Board of Supervisors is doing the high water mark approval on June 2nd.
Okay, so
Yeah, we,
at our meeting next week,
We
we're
need
going to get what?
You're gonna get the O&M budget.
So what I need from you is, for next week, my suggestion, because what will be approved at the June 2nd meeting by the Board of Supervisors is the high water mark. Put in pie in the sky, anything you think you could possibly spend, because your
Right.
budget cannot go up
from that.
after June 2nd. It can only go down. So if you think you want to do some projects, put it in here. It's better to have it be high and take it down because the bottom line cannot change after June 2nd.
Okay.
before, you-
I would like to put 100,000 in.
well,
into
we'll,
landscape.
You guys can, that's, yeah.
Laura, let me ask, so we're talking expenditures, but we gotta get the money from somewhere, and we get it from two places. HOAs through Pelican Preserve Residence.
Which does not come over to the
you know,
adult two
and
fund. Yep,
secondly, the property tax.
correct.
With these changes, do we have to look at how CDD is gonna look at that allocation of what to increase the property taxes? Or do we look at increasing the HOA fees?
I guess that's up to you. I mean,
The
the HOA fees can't pay,
Well, the source of revenue is from the
All of-
HOAs.
no, everything on this sheet comes from the taxes.
No, but here on the
It says
Infomark.
I think that's just what they call
They
it.
just
They call it
they just
HOA
call it that.
fees.
Okay,
That's actually the tax
it's all-
assessment.
Right, it's all,
Yeah.
it's all.
so it's all property tax? that's the
Correct.
area?
Yeah,
This
it's
is all the
it's
non-ad
non-
valorem.
non-ad valorem stuff.
Yep.
So therefore, my
Yeah.
question, forget about it.
Yeah, they word it weird. I don't understand why they have it titled that way. This is all non-ad valorem. The HOA is separate. Nothing in the HOA
I
fees
wondered
pays for
about
anything
that.
CDD.
The only things that are not in that are the fire impact fees
Yes,
and the.
Well, that's not anything we would collect.
That's right.
Yeah.
in our interest investments.
So all of
Agreed.
the income on that sheet that
Mm.
comes from the financials from us is non-ad valorem taxes.
Very
And
good.
all of this is funded through non-ad valorem
Non-
taxes.
And remember, that's what we determine what we get paid on our property taxes. So as we increase that budget to fund, those property taxes go up too.
And you pretty much
Yes.
have full control over what your non-ad valorem is. There's
Yes,
a
we do.
very tiny, I think it's like, I figured it out last year, like 98% of the non-ad valorem assessment to Pelican is determined by this sheet right here.
Yes,
The other
exactly.
2% comes from us.
Yes.
But between what the budget is this year and what the proposed budget, according to these bottom line figures, on Laura's thing.
Yeah.
We have some wiggle room.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And so I'm saying, I think we should now talk about what we would like to see in that wiggle room, because that will not increase their taxes.
Right. Well,
If the same bottom line figure
mhm.
that we would approve would be 3,329,656, that's not going to increase the people's taxes in Pelican Reserve at all.
Thank you.
And if you don't put it in the budget,
Mhm.
you don't have to spend it, but you can never pay for it if you don't get it in the budget the first place.
Okay.
Very good.
So thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
So the numbers that we want to look at are the stuff in the O&M. Are there changes need to be made?
What I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to redo my worksheet. Joe sent me his preliminary budget numbers. And I'm gonna take what he sent me and what I provided back to you. I believe I answered your questions.
You did, Scott. Thank you.
So I'm gonna tie all of those together and send you out a new spreadsheet.
Yep.
Once we send it, he'll send it to the committee. Just make sure all I's are dotted.
Before Thursday next week.
Well, actually, you're gonna have it this.
Okay, I'll do,
I'll work on it this weekend today.
I'll have it to you guys Monday
Yeah.
latest.
And then I think we can make our proposal, Carol, as to what we might want to add in at that point. The point is we need to know those total numbers.
Yes.
And,
Now, do all of you have Excel? I know Phil needs me to send it in PDF format.
yeah,
You got Excel?
I have,
So, and
yeah, I do.
I really prefer getting a live Excel rather than a PDF because
Yeah.
I take it and I work on it. And
No, I just want to know. I send
yeah,
it
no, I
Excel.
like Excel.
Okay, you got Excel?
PDF.
Okay, I'll send them both ways.
Hey, Phil, I have a question to Scott, and hopefully won't take much time on the line item. Scott, on irrigation, that's an asset of PPCA, correct? Or am I wrong? The controls and stuff like that, or do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, if you're talking about the pump house, the shared agreement with the golf course on the wells, but the actual pump equipment.
No, not the pump, the irrigation within the ground and the control panels, to control that, to water the lawns and stuff like that.
That belongs to the district and the neighborhoods. That does not
Okay,
belong.
okay. Then the other question is on the agreement is time and materials, or is it an ongoing contract?
It is time and materials.
So if something big breaks, like a control panel,
Let me clarify that, Doug. The new contract has minor irrigation repairs such as replacement of spray heads and rotors,
okay.
the smaller feed lines.
But if it took out a big control panel, that'd be an additional expense that wasn't in the budget.
That is correct. So we
Okay.
have to look at least funding one control panel, and then the remainder would be like a 6-inch water main break.
Okay, that's it. I understand. That's all I need.
So, valves, control panels, water mains.
Okay.
so Scott, on putting together these numbers, which you've almost already done, you will be giving us the details and the reasons, which is on one of Doug's or one of Glenn's.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that spreadsheet and pull it forward for the budget year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that we know why we're spending what we're spending on each,
Don't have that narrative.
on each line item.
No pressure. I'll get it.
I guess I'm still, so we've got to look at the total expenditures. That's it. And, as you said, Joe, the reallocation we can do later.
Yeah.
It's total, we've got to be able to look at total expenditures versus total expenditures. So if we have room, you know, we may want to up, we probably will want to up some of these things, but we need to look at what the total expenditures look like.
Phil, my logic here, when I look at this, if we move, I'll just throw a number out there, 600,000 from, you know, what Castle does and move it over to PPAC, and do not increase PPAC's budget number, we've decreased the other by 600,000, which is good to the homeowners because that's expense that they're paying for through their HOA fees that now will be paid for out of the CDD. So that is, if one stays constant, the other one decreases, that's good, correct?
No, that's not correct. We're not even talking about the association here. These are all of the numbers that we have in
I
these
got you.
funded. It's
I
just,
got you. It's paid for PPAC anyway, even though it's, I got you.
If we take all the numbers we have for 2022 is our basis, and we need to come up with a bottom line for the CDD by next week, I never like to use historical numbers to create my budget because there's always influencing conditions that change things. But it seems to me the easiest way is if we spent $100,000 this year, what do we expect inflation costs to go, and just multiply that up. And if we hit a line item where we know there's going to be some change from the economy, we can try to adjust that. But I think
that's what Scott's going to do.
Yeah, I think so.
He's going to look at it line by line by line by line.
He's done that every year, yes.
Yeah, and a lot of it's already done, right, on this.
Right.
you gave us,
And he's
right?
done a good
Yes,
job.
that's what yes.
Yeah. So the question is, what are we looking at for inflation?
3.5%.
You think so?
Yep.
I was thinking 4%, just as a general round off number for not to exceed thing.
Yeah.
Let me tell you one thing, somewhat aside. Cost of fertilizer has gone up 150%.
Yeah.
And then you got all the fuel that these.
Well, certainly, I think your suggestion is well taken for the number we're going to give them next week.
Yeah.
Because the number we're going to give them next week, we may want to squeeze it down at some
I
point.
think we work on that.
But we want to give them a not to exceed number.
Yep.
So it ought to be a pretty generous number. We've always made it a pretty generous number.
I will get that to all of you.
Okay.
I'll have it to you as soon as he gets it to me.
Okay.
So Scott, how long does it take you then to do what ifs? Like you get us the numbers, you know, based on all the line items and moving everything wherever you're going to move them. And then if we said, what if we increased it by 50,000 for security? You know, everybody wants to be secure now. Security is a big issue. If we want to spend 50,000 more next year on security and I don't know for what, but just say, how long does it take you to put that 50,000 in? So
2
that we could
minutes,
see.
change it.
Into the spreadsheet? I
Two
do it
minutes.
right here while I'm working.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
So
I
we
can
could
give
do
you
all,
what- I can
we could
give
do
you
all
a
that
bottom
next
line.
week.
We can do that all that next
Yeah.
week.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
So we should just be thinking this week about,
When you get the numbers from me through Scott, consider what you suggested about projects, et cetera,
okay,
and where you would like to incorporate that into the numbers. And
got it.
Scott will be sitting there and he's got the Excel in front of him and he says, okay, we'll bump that line item by 50 grand, et cetera.
Okay,
I think one of the things we should consider this year, which I don't think we ever finished this project last year, is a letter of explanation to
Yeah,
the
we never,
residents. And I think we're going to be seeing some changes, whether the bottom line changes or not. We have people in the community that are really, they're voicing opinions about landscaping, they're voicing opinions about security. And if we have increases in those areas, I think we have to address that and maybe say, you people have raised your voice, we have listened. This is what it's going to take to do it, and explain that to them. If most people are really serious about having better security or serious about having better landscaping, there's a cost associated with that. And I mean, I don't want to see any more dimes spent than we
No, I
have
don't
to.
either.
But the
That's
fact
my
is,
taxes.
you know, yeah, I totally agree. But if people are really adamant about some of these things, I mean, we're paying extra money to bring police in, and we hear people saying, well, what are they doing? We're not getting our money's worth. Well, and that's off the subject, and I'll just leave it at that. I think we need to address that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right.
And
You know-
again, we mentioned security. And one thing we have to keep in mind is both the district and the HOA position in the declarations is we do not have a secure community. Personal security is left up to the homeowner. So it gets right down to what is an acceptable level of controlled access? Because we'll never have a secure compound. It's impossible. We have too large a property and too many access points. And truthfully, anybody can climb a fence or a wall.
You know,
So I mean, it really gets down to, is security a reality or a perception? And
I think it's
where do we put the money?
It's a
it's a
perception.
debate for another day perhaps, but
Yeah.
I think we have, since I moved to Pelican Preserve, I had an absolutely total false impression of security. And some of it was we were trying to convey to people that this is, excuse me, a secured area, but security comes down to each person in this community. We are no different than people on the other side of the fence from security. We have never really stressed that. And I can remember asking questions about it when I was a brand new newbie here and say, well, don't tell anybody we don't really have a closed gated community. We don't.
No.
But don't tell anybody, because if nobody knows, then they'll expect that we do. And I think with 5,000 people now living in that community, or 4,500, people really need to understand the truth.
That we're a controlled
We
access
are a
community.
control, and the truth, if you tell them the truth and you make sure they understand it, you're not going to see these people saying, well, I thought the security guard would take care of this. The security guard isn't trained, isn't responsible, and if he does, or he or she does something, they could get themselves in trouble, plus get the community in trouble. So we need to make sure people understand the facts.
Okay, I suddenly realized that had a question. I didn't ask Laura a question, and that is that I guess capital outlay for the boardwalk was over 2 years. I guess we took some of it last year. Okay. I've answered my own question. I know it was over $1 million, but it's over 2 years.
Right.
So Glenn, the 5 million, whatever that you say we have in the total reserves, is that sufficient?
Well, we have to do, one of the things we have to do, Carol, is we have to do another reserve study. Right now, in the capital reserve account, we've got about $3.4 million. Now, whether that is adequate or not, we have to determine. And Glenn, you're still kind of trying to find out somebody who could do a capital reserve study for us.
Working with the CDD.
Working with the CDD on that. And I think one of the things we haven't done,
So we should budget for that study.
yeah,
I mean, we should put some money in there.
Yeah.
To have the study done, because you're going to do it during next year.
it's a good thought.
Yeah, but you know, that, I think that, Scott, you might be able to clarify this better. That's a one-time deal, the reserve study. So I don't know that we budget that. I think that comes out of a different fund if it's a one-time deal.
I don't think so.
No.
Oh, it's budgeted, Joe, it's budgeted. I have a lot of one-time things. You have to budget it or there's no money.
Budget. I think Carol,
Okay, okay.
you make a very good point there. We ought to be budgeting for that.
Yeah.
We ought to be able to find out what we paid the last time, give us a judgment, but
Well, I mean, I would like to know
yes.
how much every year we need to have in reserves.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And that's what in the study, we did the 365,000 you see for reserves. That number came from the previous reserve
Right.
study.
About 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. So
We actually looked into that already, didn't we?
well, we need to, but we're looking at, we've got to do a reserve study this year. And one of the things we need to do, I think, is we need to expand the reserve study to include landscaping
Yes, we do.
and upgrading of some of the other things which were not included. It did not include
Right.
the monuments and the landscaping, and that's got to be included, I think.
Yeah, we've got some major things to work.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions, comments? Okay, so next week at our meeting, we will be putting in our not to exceed budget, and we need the kind of thing that Carol just mentioned. We need to think about probably the one-time things that maybe are not, won't be on the list that Gwen's gonna send us.
True.
Look at the list, see what you think, see whether you think the proposed increases are reasonable as well. And so that we can have a good discussion of that.
Hey, Phil, should we look at the agenda? Because adding this to the agenda is a pretty big, it could take a while on this topic. Should we look at moving other agenda items to a future meeting?
Yeah, let me take a look at it, Doug, as to whether, how time consuming we think some of those things may be.
Or, I could come in at 1 o'clock instead of 2
I can too.
and just do it for,
I can't do one.
you can't do 1. Okay.
Well, your budget is pretty well set. We haven't even discussed it. And
Yeah.
Yes.
so the rest of us, and Randy, are you still with us or have we lost you?
No, I'm with you.
Could you make it at 1 o'clock?
I could make it at 1 o'clock.
Okay, all right, I will see if we can move that up to 1 o'clock if the room is available at that time.
I'd like to say something, and I'm sorry to say this, but most of you know I have a tax business, and I have another office open, and now I'm going to open an office beside Domino's at the corner of Tree Line and Colonial,
Oh,
because I did over 275 returns this year. So I'm looking to expand my operation. I'm in discussion with doing that and the lease, etc. My wife's going to be very happy not to see people at the house anymore, more so, because I do have another office, but I want to work through the budget with you. I'm going to work with Scott, and it's been a good ride, but I think you need to replace me. All right? And I'm letting you know now, but I'm not going to leave you in a lurch here at this time because I want to make sure we got our budget in place. So, I'm working a couple of days a week now, but it's dropped off, so I can do this now till you can find a suitable replacement.
Giving us the advance warning.
Yes,
Okay.
and I want to thank everybody. I've certainly learned a lot about, there's some real challenges in the committee. But I wanted you to know that today.
Thank you.
If you know anybody that's interested, please let us know. If you can talk anybody into it.
Well, there are some other bean counters out there. I'm not saying you need,
Well, it would be good to have somebody with a bean counter background.
Yes, but also you do have some good knowledge here on this committee already. Meetings like today, they've really, I think, created better knowledge, right? So every year it becomes a little easier. And we'll see what happens here with this O&M agreement, but, you know, I rely a lot on Chris and Scott.
Sure.
And we've set up electronic signatures on approving invoices. So I think you have someone who's also tech savvy. You don't have to physically go to the offices, because Scott sends them to me or Chris, and I electronically approve them, go through them. At my Makes life a lot easier than having to go and physically spend time. Because it is, we forget this is a volunteer position, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it certainly is.
It really is. But I'm just letting you know, so
Okay.
we'll see how long it takes.
Okay.
All right?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is Randy. I wonder if I could ask one question
Sure.
regarding this budget. I had hoped to be able to present a bid and some other information in terms of improved lighting at the intersection of Pelican Preserve and Cypress Grove Drive. To date, we've gotten a report back from Tetra Tech and some kind of a cost estimate on that, but still waiting for a number of other things that, you know, requests have been made in terms of getting information. Should I be asking for trying to put into this budget sort of the projection that we had, Tetra Tech had given us? It's higher. It's higher than anybody really believes needs to be spent at that particular intersection. But when I look at the budget, and I'm looking at the most recent that Glenn had provided, and it was through February of 2022, there's only one line item there that says safety and security. It's at $75,000, and less than 5,000 had been spent through 5 months. So everything seems to be, you know, in the security, you know, in the wiser contract and things that I don't have visibility for. So I'm not quite sure how to handle that.
Well, yeah, Randy, I think it sounds like we may have enough money in the safety and security account to do that this year. But that's the kind of thing, if there are other kinds of things, that's the kind of thing, you know, as Carol mentioned, we're gonna have to do a reserve study. The kind of thing that we ought to be thinking about, what other kinds of expenditures? In that particular case, I think we can get it done within this year's budget.
And I would certainly hope so too. It seems to be hard to push things along in terms of getting the information needed. And the thing I'm concerned about is that I've been told that a manufacturer of a streetlight, as an example, could be 4 months, 16 weeks. So I could see where it'd be very easy to run out of time, even though we've got, you know, half the year left. So that's, you know, another consideration relative to this budget.
Can we approve those funds?
But I can provide you know, I can provide via email the report for everybody to see, and with some estimates, and give my best guess as to what the safety and security group may bring to PPAC as a recommendation and a request.
Is there any?
Randy, because those light posts are special ordered, you'll have to put a 50% deposit down to get them into manufacturing. Right now, through West Coast Electric, it takes 16 weeks to get a replacement light pole. So with that in mind, you're going to pay the deposit. You can always accrue by having the final invoice and submit that for payment. And then what we can do, we can cut a live check and hold the check until the work is done. That way it's actually expensed into this year.
That should-
Okay.
That should take care of the timing problem, Randy.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just, you, one of two ways, we check with the district to see if we can accrue. I don't know if they will do that, but if that's the case, then the easiest thing is to pay the final invoice before the work is done and just hold the check and mail it once the work is completed and it's been inspected.
Okay. Let's look at whether we can do accrual. That would be preferable. Scott, can you check with the board? Okay. Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
I have one question talking about lampposts. There was a car that crashed into a lamppost at the circle, Broadway with Lena. And I think that lamppost is still leaning. Is that?
It's secure.
I'm sure it's secure. It hasn't fallen on my head. But,
Yeah.
Is there a plan to get that straightened out?
The light post has been ordered
Oh,
again.
we had to order a new one?
16, yeah. Yeah, it was $16,000.
okay.
This is really, we got to watch this. We're off budget.
Right. I just was a question where we,
Sure.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it. The meeting is adjourned.
See you next week.
It's adjourned. We'll see you next week.
Phil, what's your opinion